Tanse, I'm Krista Nachkete. Welcome to APTN National News. Thank you for joining us. The man involved in a firearm incident on the Zagime Anishinabek First Nation in southeast Saskatchewan on Tuesday has a violent gang history, according to documents APTN News has obtained from the Parole Board of Canada. Meanwhile, the RCMP say they are still trying to determine if the incident in Zagime is connected to the murder of 4 people earlier this week in a home on the Carry the Kettle Nakota Nation. Wednesday morning, the Regina Police Service arrested 29-year-old Keegan Panapakisik and 2 others in a North Regina neighborhood. Panapakisik was charged with pointing a firearm and possession of a firearm for that incident in Zagime. According to parole documents, in March of 2016, Panapakisik was involved in assaulting a man for a drug debt. A month later, he was involved in a home invasion where a man was forcibly confined and beaten with a gun. The parole board says it considered GLADU factors for Panapakisik, including his upbringing in a, quote, fragmented family, unquote, where he was exposed to poverty and violence. The parole board considered Panapakisik had a significant chance to reoffend. Panapakisik is in custody. He is considered a person of interest in the killing of 4 people in what RCMP are calling a targeted attack that happened Monday night at Carry the Kettle. RCMP Major Crimes continues their investigation. And you can read more about Panapakisik's history by going to our website at www.aptnnews.ca. To Manitoba now, where RCMP Major Crimes says they are investigating a sudden death on the Pinamutang First Nation, 240 kilometers northwest of Winnipeg. On Friday, January 31st, the family was told that 50-year-old April Woodhouse was found lying outside on the steps of a home in Pinamutang. She was taken to hospital in nearby Ashern but later died. The family says hospital staff told them Woodhouse had signs of internal bleeding and that her hands and other parts of her body were bruised. Initially, the RCMP said Woodhouse's death was not a homicide. However, on Thursday, RCMP told APTN News Major Crimes is investigating, adding, the autopsy has been scheduled for early next week, which should provide information on any criminality or if it was due to exposure. Officers in the community are currently taking statements from people who may have been in contact with her prior to her death. 2 people were sentenced Thursday for their roles in the death of Megan Gallagher. Gallagher went missing from Saskatoon in 2020, and her remains were found 2 years later along the South Saskatchewan River near St. Louis. A total of 9 people were accused of various charges in her death. On Thursday, at the Court of King's Bench in Saskatoon, family and friends of Megan Gallagher gathered for the sentencing of Summer Sky Henry and Cheyenne Petitus. Both pleaded guilty to manslaughter last month. They each received 7 years in federal prison with credit for time served. Petitus will serve nearly 6 years after receiving credit for 378 days, while Henry will serve just under 5.5 years after receiving credit for 609 days. A publication ban is currently in place to protect the upcoming trials of the final 2 accused in Gallagher's death. Thomas Sutherland is charged with manslaughter. Roderick Sutherland is charged with first-degree murder. They will both go on trial later this year. A homeless shelter that serves clientele in Montreal, many of whom are Indigenous and residential school survivors, is about to run out of funding. Resilience Montreal Executive Director David Chapman says he met with Quebec's Minister of Social Services, Lionel Carmont, in November of last year. The discussion resolved around the desire for the center to expand its services and that there's a deficit in funding. The center says the funding deficit is not being addressed, and as a result, the center is weeks away from running out of money to continue its operations. Chapman says the minister has not responded to the letter Resilience sent to him on Monday. It asks for a response to this issue and to urgently provide funding so that Resilience can continue its services. Minister Carmont responded to APTN's request for comment, promising that the regional healthcare center closest to Resilience Montreal will reach out.
In 3 weeks, basically, we run out of money. So we go below zero. And when you go below zero, then you have to make hard choices, Obviously, if we do actually go below zero, then we're going to be looking at closing for a time. And that's obviously not something we want to do. But it also asks the bigger question, why year after year do we have to keep doing this scramble?
Now to a story in Saskatchewan we told you about earlier this week. An archaeological site near the Sturgeon Lake First Nation is challenging the narratives about early Indigenous civilizations in North America. As CTV's John Flatters finds out, the community wants to protect this piece of history that dates back nearly 11,000 years.
3 years ago, near Sturgeon Lake First Nation, a discovery by avocational archaeologist Dave Rondeau holds evidence of Indigenous presence in the area dating back thousands of years.
One of our researchers, Dave Rondeau, who noticed some of the artifacts eroding from the riverbank and brought it to our attention. And at first it looked like an old buffalo jump.
In the years since, a group of researchers have worked to uncover the significance of this location without excavating. Hidden beneath layers of soil until the land eroded were bones showing signs of butchering, piles of stone flakes that suggest tools were made there, and charcoal that would indicate a firing location.
So it's showing, we've got very early stuff, but it's also being reoccupied. Who knows how often, but it's being reoccupied at different times for at least hundreds, if not thousands of years.
Using radiocarbon dating, Stewart says they were able to find that bone from that location dates back around 9,000 years. But the age of the charcoal dates back even further.
So this particular piece came back around 10,600 to 10,700 years old. So people have taken to rounding that up to 11,000, but technically it's a couple of hundred years younger.
The First Nation has assembled a council to study and protect the site with a vision to create an interpretive center to preserve this piece of history.
This site isn't just proof of our history, it's proof of our strength, our resilience, and our connection to the land. And so now it's up to us to protect and to make sure that the world hears our story.
With evidence dating back nearly 11,000 years, Sturgeon Lake First Nation says it makes this site one of the oldest known Indigenous settlements in North America. John Flatters, CTV News, Saskatoon.
We're always looking for your feedback or story ideas. Here's how you can continue the conversation with us. If you have a story you want to share, send us an email to news@aptn.ca. To read and watch our stories, you can go to www.aptnnews.ca. And you can also find us online on your favorite social media sites, including TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, and X. Follow APTN News to join the conversation and see our latest stories. When we come back, we'll tell you about a unique Indigenous school music tour in Manitoba set to begin soon. We'll be right back in about 3 minutes. Stay with us. Welcome back. The organizer behind a popular Indigenous festival held in Whitehorse each summer says the event has been postponed until further notice. The Attica Festival brings over 200 Indigenous artists and performers from the Yukon and beyond and attracts around 1,000 visitors each day. The Yukon First Nations Culture and Tourism Association is the organization behind the festival. It says due to changing circumstances, it's pausing several long-standing cultural and tourism events to ensure the organization's long-term sustainability. That includes the festival. APTN News reached out to the association for more information. A spokesperson said it's not accepting media requests at this time. A one-of-a-kind Indigenous school music tour kicks off this Monday in Manitoba. The tour will bring musician and Peguis First Nation member Nelson Little to schools across 18 Indigenous communities in Manitoba. Reporter Sierra Bettens caught up with Little and program coordinator Rhonda Head before they hit the road.
For a few years now, I've been trying to find purpose in why I write and what my message is as a writer, and what I believe in as an artist. So I think speaking and going out to these communities is something I have a passion for.
In less than a week, Indigenous country music artist Nelson Little will embark on a 3-month tour like no other.
This one is one of the biggest tours that we've taken on, and we're going to 18 Indigenous communities right throughout Manitoba. So it's really exciting that Nelson's going to be part of this one of the biggest tours that we're starting.
Internationally renowned Cree vocalist Rhonda Head has organized 5 tours through the Indigenous Touring Program. Funded by Canadian Heritage, the Manitoba Arts Council, and the Manitoba Arts Network, the program brings live music to students in Indigenous communities across Manitoba.
It's important that we do an Indigenous tour because they need to see a brown face who's succeeding in the music industry, where we empower them and we inspire them.
The journey begins on Monday in St. Teresa Point, a flying community about 465 kilometers north of Winnipeg. After stops in Garden Hill and Wasagamak, the tour will visit communities in southwestern, southern, and northern Manitoba.
They're in remote places and they can't leave the community, so it's really exciting that we're going into the community and inspiring youth one community at a time.
Little grew up in northern Manitoba and is a member of the Peguis First Nation. These days, the 3-time Country Music Award winner lives in Portage la Prairie, where he balances being a dad, a musician, and a carpenter.
I'm a carpenter as well. Since 18 years old, I actually worked on the Wasagamak school. So it's going to be neat to speak to those students and let them know that those hallways, when they were steel studs, I was there putting them together and stuff.
While he's excited to hit the stage, the tour is more than a performance. In between songs, Little will share how he got from where the students are to where he is today.
I was in a gun accident at 13, and I was in a car accident at 17, all in my high school years. So I feel I have the message for them that even with some trials in your life, you can still dream big and you can still go get what you want, even if it's something fun like playing guitar and singing songs.
The last leg of the tour wraps up on May 9th in Waskwaysipik First Nation, north of Dauphin, Manitoba. And while the stops are short, Head says the impact is lasting.
To see the kids smiling and you could see that sparkle in their eye and you could see their minds rolling, and then you could see that the musicians are inspiring the youth.
Now that I finally understand my life with all the hardships as a youth, how I overcame it, and I think that's where this collaboration is going to work really well, is to just share how I did it, because that's what they need to hear, is how you overcome challenges and reach for the goal.
Anytime, anywhere, anyone, just make it happen.
Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
We have another collaboration between APTN and Sportsnet to tell you about that brings you Hockey Night in Canada in Cree. Hockey night in Canada has been making waves in previous seasons and assists APTN in meeting its mandate to revitalize Indigenous languages. Clarence Iron will be back as the play-by-play announcer along with line mates John Shabbat, Earl Wood, and Jason Chamakis live here at the APTN studio. On Saturday, February 8th, watch the Toronto Maple Leafs face off against the Vancouver Canucks at 7 p.m. Eastern in Vancouver. Make sure to make it a family sports night and tune in. We now want to tell you about this week's third web poll question. Over on our website, we ask, are you intentionally avoiding US-made products? Your answers are yes, no, or unsure. You can go to our website at www.aptnnews.ca to have your say. Weather is up next, along with a preview for this week's brand new episode of APTN's In Focus podcast. We'll be right back. Starting on the east, Charlottetown -7, sunny in Halifax at -2. The Grand River -12, Nain -14. Quebec City -11, Gaspé -2 and sun. Sunny in Sarnia at -1, Toronto 0. Sudbury -8, Sioux Lookout -13. -22 in God's Lake, Thompson -20. -13 in Gimli, Princess Harbour -14. Saskatoon -21, Yorkton -15. Meadow Lake -19, La Ronge, sun and -19. -13 in Grand Prairie, Peace River -13. Lethbridge -12, Medicine Hat -15. Penticton -5, Kamloops -7. Fort Nelson -18, Dease Lake -13. -19 in Watson Lake Mail, -20 and partly cloudy. Rain in Fort Simpson at -24, Wrigley -26. Paulatuck -22, Colville Lake -30. -27 in Baker Lake, Chesterfield -25. And Iqaluit -19, Igloolik -30. A new episode of the APTN News In Focus podcast is officially out, this time putting the Liberal leadership race in focus. This week, our Parliament Hill reporter Karen Pugliese and host Sierra Bettens takes a closer look at where reconciliation fits in the candidates' platforms. Here's a sneak peek of that episode.
If we remember past leadership races, like even with Justin Trudeau, but even going back to Paul Martin, there was a lot of mention of Indigenous people, or some mention of Indigenous people in those leadership debates and in leadership race. This time, there was really just nothing. And so the candidates have really been focused on other things. They're focused on, for the ones who have been quote unquote close to Trudeau, are trying to separate themselves from Trudeau because of his unpopularity. They were focused very much on the election of Trump in the US. The free trade agreement was coming up for renewal in 2026 anyway. But with the Trump suddenly taking that hard line on tariffs, everybody's been focused on how they would react to this tough Trump government coming up in the States. And so even before that, when there was kind of room where they could have launched an Indigenous policy or mentioned Indigenous people, there were no mentions in the launch. There's been very little for Indigenous people knowing where the candidates stand so far in this race. So it does feel a little bit like a post-reconciliation race where reconciliation is just being forgotten about.
And you can catch that episode of APTN News In Focus on your favorite podcast platform or by visiting aptnnews.ca/podcasts. Anishinaabe and Finnish pop singer Natasha Fisher has been announced as an official opener for an OG Cree artist currently on tour. Anishinaabe released the news earlier this week. Veronica Blackhawk caught up with the singer to find out more.
Yeah, oh my gosh. I feel so grateful and excited for the opportunity to open for Anishinaabe at the Access Club here in Toronto, which is like a legendary venue. And, I just really want to give the appreciation and love to Anishinaabe and his team for giving opportunities to independent Indigenous artists.
Hey everybody, I am so excited to announce our first Toronto opener. This is Anishinaabe Finnish singer-songwriter and pop artist Natasha Fisher.
The news couldn't come at a better time for the artist, who was working by herself to write, release, and promote new music. She shares more about her most recent single.
So the song's called Another Stranger. It dropped on January 24th, and it's been my fastest growing song so far.
The emerging artist from Long Lake 58 First Nation, Ontario, grew up in Thunder Bay. Now based in Toronto, the Anishinaabe pop singer is keeping busy.
Being an independent artist, it gives you the independence, like it says in the title, to do whatever you want, release whenever you want, which can come with its own set of challenges because you are doing the load of the work.
And with that independence, Fisher chooses to give back to Indigenous communities, working alongside relative and fellow musician Classic Roots to deliver music workshops to Indigenous communities and more.
So I'm doing a songwriting workshop with the University of Toronto, and that came about because they saw some of the work that I had been doing on Northern communities, teaching songwriting workshops to Indigenous youth on remote communities in Northern Ontario.
Catch Natasha Fisher open for Anishinaabe on March 21st at the Access Club in Toronto. Tickets are available now on Anishinaabe's website.
Thank you, Veronica. Mother Tongue Teachings is a special segment here on our noon show for February's I Love to Read month. Once a day, TR Wheatley will introduce you to a knowledge carrier who will give you a phrase of the day. Our goal is to take you to the roots of Indigenous languages from our provinces and territories. To end this week, here's Betsy Mazawasachuna, a Dakota speaker who's helping revive the language through the Manitoba First Nations Education Resource Centre.
So for I Love to Read month, we are out in the community talking to Indigenous language carriers and speakers. I have somebody who speaks Dakota here with me.
Yeah.
Okay, so say to him, say, I'm Betsy, what, in your language.
Okay, I'm Betsy Mazwashituna from Sioux Valley, Manitoba. The word or which way that I'm going to use to learn, unspe. Unspe means to learn, and with this I have a book. Zitkada Wawi Chabadake, I See Birds. It's one of the first books I translated for elementary school students.
So, say this whole word for me and what they mean.
Zitkada is birds. Wawi Chabadake is I see birds.
So let's pronounce it again. The first word.
Zitkada.
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 Oh, Zitkada.
Wawi Chabadake.
Wawi Chabadake.
Yeah. The book is about different types of birds that we have in the community. There's eagle, owl, duck, goose, raven, chicken, turkey, pelican, bush chicken, robin, and a magpie. Our languages are on the verge of disappearing, and it's very important for our grandkids to learn. How I learned was just listening at home, and some of the words that I didn't know until much later in life, and I put two and two together, and that's how I learned.
A big thank you to Betsy Mazawasichana and the Manitoba First Nations Education Resource Center for sharing your language speakers with APTN this week. Go to our website at aptnnews.ca/our stories to check out T.R. Wheatley's Mother Tongue teachings. All February long, we will upload a new phrase of the day each weekday. Go TR Go. And that's your daytime newscast for this Friday, February 7th. Dennis Ward is back for your evening newscast in a few hours. Make sure to join him then. From all of us at APTN National News, hi, thank you for watching, and we'll see you again, same place, same time, next Monday. Excellent.